Welcome everyone. My name is Raju. Welcome to the board discussion on the GNU Linux adoption policy. GNU Linux in specific, but free software in general. And we'll be having this discussion with multiple people over here. Welcome to the discussion. We have some people around here. We would be discussing the free software adoption policies and some of the experiences that we have had across the world in similar scenarios, as well as how to get it implemented in Kosovo. We have Arianit Dobroshi over here, who is the executive board president of FOSS Kosovo. We have Daniel Lange, who is the CEO of Faster IT GmbH. We have Pirate Praveen, who is a Debian developer as well as the founder of Untitled, a free software first software company. He's also a part of the free software community of India. We have Lulzon Jaksiu, who is the CTO and advisor to the Prime Minister. We have Dukakjini Pupochi, who is also the Minister of Education, Science and Technology. So to all the esteemed guests, welcome. So I'll introduce the format of the discussion today. So initially we'll start with setting up the context. So I'll give you like 5 minutes to put on your points regarding the adoption policy, and we can move onward from there. We'll have some discussions, and then at the end we'll open the floor for questions to everyone. Yeah. We can start with Arianit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The benefit of open source or free software is that you can start immediately using it. Just go download it and get using it. The downside or the enemy, let's say, is business as usual. So we really have to go out of the way to change things. And in March 2001, FLUSK drafted a short policy document proposal, which we sent to different ministries that have responsibilities in the ICT field in Kosovo. And we proposed several things that could be done easily, and starting from the really easy one to more demanding, like policy level changes. And there the 7 actions included expanding the public material created by the institution. So what we said there is that what the government keeps doing what it's already doing, but will put a license, a label that says, hey, this is free and you may reuse this, and this is really easy to do. And then we said that also procurement could be done so that adoption of FLOSS is not discouraged. Again, this is something easy and should really be happening anyways. If it's not happening, it's already illegal by the rules in place. So basically no discrimination. And then action 3 is we said that the software that is already being made built for government institutions, it would be published in a common repository under a free license. Again, this is also easy. It involves some administrative works, but the government already owns the rights in most cases. So it would point to a repository and upload everything there. Our 4th action that we requested is release data created by public institutions as open data. There is an open data repository. It's already done some, but really there needs to be a more determined action by different government institutions. And the only thing missing here is teaching those officials who deal daily with data to upload them to an open data repository. With regard to our guest, we have made a policy change suggestion, which I'm not sure what the situation is now, but at the time, so we said, instead of buying books per copy, we said buy the publication rights. So you may continue to buy the printed books, but what we want to see is that there is continuous improvement, and in software we know that this works really well, but we want to see anybody being able to do mashups of books and continuously improve on them, on school textbooks. And then as action 6, which I think Daniel is really good with this and can tell us more, is that the government focuses on a Linux distribution that would be distributed to schools, citizens, and public administration. And this is the way that Kosovo government could give back to the Linux community, but also take back, and by using an operating system, which is really excellent. And as the last action, we said that there would be a FOSS policy. So this is the most demanding, most formal requirement, where the government would introduce this deliberate FOSS policy that could be added to some of the documents that are currently being worked on, and that would ensure some kind of long-term plan for the government to work on and contribute on. So that's all for me to start with. Thank you.
Thank you, Arianit. So Arianit put in some points regarding the document that they sent to the government, and it focused on various issues as demanding the action items. Now I would like to invite comments from Daniel. Daniel, all over to you.
So,
yeah. Yep.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think Arianit has kind of a pretty concise story of what would be beneficial from a FOSS perspective for the state of Kosovo. It's a young state, so it has the chance to do things better than other states that have more baggage in their administrative processes can do, and that opportunity should be used. We were having lunch today with USAID, who have a 5-year development program in the ICT area, and they have projects, and they have ideas, and they have funds. So there is also external funding available to go in this direction, which is always good news, I think. What I'd be most interested in is to hear from you, to hear from Mr. Popovici. Hope that was halfway correct. To basically kind of get your feedback on what you would need to feel comfortable in modernizing administration. Of course, free software is kind of, to us, critical in this part of the stack, because it just doesn't make sense to pay for a Windows license or an Oracle server on things which are public information generated with public money. That should also be public code. That should also be on free software, which also has the big advantage that the information is always owned by the government, because in 100 years you'll still be able to run the software that you have the source code for if you provision it properly. So you can have something like a birth register or so stored on this, but nobody is able to guarantee you which Windows version then is backwards compatible to what you had running 50 or 100 years ago. And you're at the mercy of companies, which is never good for a government when we're really talking long term. Then we have the sector of schools. I personally think it's always better to start with administration, because somebody doing car registration is totally uninterested whether it is a Linux system they're operating or Windows system they're operating, whether it's a proprietary software or free software they're operating. For them it's important that it's fast, that it's capable, and it works. And what is under there is not of their interest. In schools that is different. A teacher has a justified position, sometimes has a justified position that the students shall learn what is most useful to them directly when they are handed over to a business where they work. And here we have on the desktop 90% Windows, so there is a good argument of staying with Windows and Microsoft Office in schools out of that alone. So there's much more work that needs to be done to convince people there. And the third pillar which I'm seeing is raise the innovation and technology capability in Kosovo. This place here, the ITP, wants to be a hub for this. It wants to be developed in this direction. But of course, just providing the space alone doesn't make it happen. So I think the state of Kosovo needs to have a policy with investment, with seed funding, with a portfolio approach on startups, strengthening entrepreneurship, to basically make that happen. And if all of those three pillars are attended to, I think you would see a significant growth, because you have a young, motivated, capable workforce, intelligent people, so they're just waiting to be used. And that's, I think, what this country, from what I have experienced here over the 2 weeks where I was allowed to be a guest here, have basically been able to extract from my communication with the people.
Thank you, Daniel. Some of the things that you said, it just doesn't make sense to you to buy a software when you have free software alternatives available. And even with discussions with Arianit, it came into our context that in terms of free software, you don't actually have to buy the software. You only are buying the support or maintenance of it. It doesn't make sense to pay for something and especially paying for something from public money when it could be free, as well as it could be much more advanced or has all those features which the proprietary models provide. Also for schools, it makes sense that the school students or university students understand the core of the software instead of just using the software from the front. They are supposed to be learning the development of that particular software. Now we'll set the mic to Praveen. We have Arianit and Daniel told us about what needs to be done. From Praveen, we could learn from the use cases of the state of Kerala, where similar policies were adopted, and the successes or failures that the state of Kerala have seen.
Yeah, hello everyone. I would like to share the experience from the state of Kerala. It's a southern state in India. So we have adopted free software for teaching in schools from 8 to 10 standard, and ICT textbooks are also available under Creative Commons license that people can, maybe adapt and reuse. And the teachers, they actually customized a version of Debian, and they call it IT at School Ubuntu, and it has all the softwares that is usually useful for school. Not just the common softwares, but also tools that are useful for teaching other subjects like chemistry, physics, maths. Those kind of softwares are also included in it. And the important part in the success of Kerala free software adoption is that all the teachers, or at least starting the teachers organization, were supportive of the move, and teachers themselves customized the software, and they were actually providing the support to all other teachers. And they even had a online a phone they could any school could call in case of a problem, and they helped fix those problems. So this model would be one if the Kosovo you could try, and I would be happy to connect you with people who have implemented this in Kerala. If you are interested, maybe you can actually talk to the teachers and all the people who are directly involved in implementation of the projects, and learn what were the challenges that they faced and how did they overcome it and things like that.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you, Praveen. So the important point I want to focus on Praveen's is the vendor lock-in part. The teachers themselves customize the distribution and provided the support for it. In terms of proprietary software, let's say if you're buying school software from, let's say, some company, Microsoft or Google, they would be able to customize and support it themselves. People would not be flexible enough to do it that much. Only the software vendors would be able to provide support. it's not the flexibility in terms of modifications or support, or sometimes you can't even customize it because it's locked to that core. So that is something very noticeable. With free software, you'll be getting that flexibility to customize it the way you like. Now I would like to take, so we have set the context. I would like to invite further discussions from advisor to the PM, Liaison Chag Siu. Yeah, I hope I said the name correct.
Hello? Okay, great, you can hear me. Okay, thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure always being part of conferences like this, and for me a double pleasure being at ITP. So just a couple of words on the approach of the governments towards digitalization, and also I will touch on the topics which were mentioned earlier. So for us, digitalization is quite important. It's high priority in the government. We see it as a way to increase transparency and accountability in the government and improve the services for our citizens and businesses. Beyond that, it's very important for our economy to increase productivity in the economy, to help the economic growth, and help the ICT become a bigger contributor to the economy of our country. So in that regards, we are targeting digitalization, I would say, both strategically and pragmatically. We're working on several directions, and when we work on the various strategic documents, we try to adopt, I would say, key principles. And the principles we are looking at in terms of digital governance is the once only principle, where we try to create the concept that once the government has a certain information about the citizen, then the government should never ask for that, regardless which institution or agency, they should not ask for that information again. So this is about the interoperability of systems. So the systems need to be able to talk to each other and exchange information, so that at the end of the day, the government, as I said, would be able to adhere to the once only principle. Beyond that, there are other principles, and it has to do with having security, I would say, by default, or security by design. Many of our systems traditionally have been designed as based on certain functionality, and security has always come as an afterthought, and that has to change. In the current context, security is very important, and we have to think of security in the design of the systems we implement. And another principle is which is related to the topic today, is the principle of open data. So whereas on one hand we have to think about the security of data, protection of data which needs to be secure. At the same time, we have to think about open data. So many of the data which are not protected by law, are not personal data, for example, should be available, especially statistical data, for the public and for the civil society and anybody who wants to use it. And we want to put it as one of the key principles within our new e-government strategy, so that all new systems which are being developed, by design, they should think about open data as well. So it was mentioned earlier that we already have an open data platform which has, I would say, a limited set of open data, and we need to make sure that in the future we really make that something which is, as I said, by design of all the systems. So in terms of education, I believe the Deputy Minister will also be talking. We have completed our new strategy on education, and one of the key pillars is digitalization. There we also see digitalization as, I would say, important enabler to increase the quality, to improve the quality of our overall education system, and we are looking at digitalization comprehensively. So looking at, I would say, the digital infrastructure within the schools, and then looking at digitalized systems and processes, digital content, and of course, last but not least, the digital skills. At the end of the day, we know that the whole digital transformation process, of course, has a portion of it which is related to technology, but I would say more important part of it is the people component. And that is a key challenge, and that's something which we are trying to address within the digitalization education, but also in all the other areas of digitalization. So now coming back to the topic, I would say, of open source and open data, for us it is important that we, as Arianit also mentioned, first of all, to remove any kind of, I would say, discrimination, which sometimes is not legal. Actually, it's not legal at all, because our laws already envisage that we should not be discriminatory towards any kind of technology. But I think there is more of a, I would say, artificial barriers which exist within people, that they are inclined more towards licensed software compared to open source systems and software. So we have to really make this an open competition. We are not saying at this time that we will be deliberately favoring open source towards other software, because at the end of the day we have to take into consideration all the elements. So the key criteria for us is really to make sure that the people who will be using those systems have the necessary skills. The second is, of course, the security aspect. As I mentioned, as we plan to become more digitalized, we also are aware that we are becoming more exposed in terms of cybersecurity. So for us, security is very important as we design the new systems and architectures. And of course, the total cost of ownership is as well a very important element. We are not a rich country. We understand that we have to invest in technology, but we don't have, I would say, too much resources. So in that regards, it's important not only the upfront costs we pay for the systems, but it's also important how much is the total cost of ownership of a system and the software. One thing which is already part of our laws, and I think Arianit also mentioned that, is that according to the law, except in very special cases, whenever we buy a system, we have to own the source code as a government. That has to come as a part of a project, and that is very, very important, because at the end of the day we don't want to end up in vendor lock situations whereby you buy a certain system and you don't have a code, and then you are not able to really, you're locked to continuing the maintenance of that system through a single vendor. So all these principles, I believe, can be achieved through open technologies as well. But again, there are challenges. It's not easy, and we don't think that that's something which can be achieved overnight. We have a history, although we are a young country, over 20 years, a lot has been invested on licensed software and systems, and also a lot of knowledge and know-how inside the government, but also outside, has been built around those technologies. So we are really looking forward to hear experiences from other countries who have tried this, and learn from their experiences and see how we can advance more with open systems and technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lulzon. Now, so before moving ahead, before passing the, we are not passing the mic, but before asking Mr. Dukak Genie for his comments, some of the things that Mr. I'm sorry, I have to look up the name every time to make sure I pronounce it correctly, Mr. Lulzon. Yeah. The mental shift that we need to do is we have to make, like, free software is by somehow is considered that it's not licensed. We need to make, so that's something that, because proprietary software comes with a license and keys, free software is also licensed and very specifically licensed, but has a lot of flexibility in terms of its use. So, but mentally we think that if we are paying for something, then only we'll get a proper license. So we need to, by license it's free. So we need to look into the free software from a different angle. And the upfront costs that you mentioned are definitely better with free software. We'll ask Mr. Dukakchini to make his comments now. He's the Minister of Education. If you're there, Mr. Dukakchini, could you unmute and speak? If you're speaking, your mic is muted. We can't see you and we can't hear you. Yep, seems to be back. Oh, I think he's disconnected. His connection. Oh, yeah, it's back. Mr. Dukakchini, if you're listening to us, could you please unmute and speak? Okay. Thank you. Could you unmute and speak? We would like for you to make your comments.
He might also use an app if he has installed it.
Arianit, you can speak to him if you want to speak in the language. We can't hear you. Should we ask him to reload? We have limited time.
Is his feed coming through? Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually tested. But his system is muted. At least from Jitsi panel, it's muted. So there's no way his voice should be here.
Ask to unmute. One second.
Could you press the mute button? Yeah, just try to refresh.
If not, we can take some comments here until he's ready.
Should I wait for him? No.
I think we can go with comments in the room, and when
Yep.
he's ready, we can...
So, while we wait, is he back?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, it seems to be better,
Yes.
and probably you can also see me. No?
Not right now, but at least we can hear you now.
Okay, but now yes, probably.
Now, yes.
Okay. So I wish really this session took place yesterday when I was visiting Kosovo Research and Education Network, which operates where you are right now. But I couldn't make it today for this session, so thank you very much for making possible online participation. The reason my line was so weak is that I had to use my 3G connection. I wish it was at least 4G, but it isn't. And the bandwidth appeared to be between 2 and 3 megabits per second. Now it is better. And have designed Jitsi to operate quite well at such a low speed. Anyway, I am using this connection. For some reason, has blocked Jitsi. So we start from here when we discuss the use of open source in public administration. We have system simply blocked by our ISP. I haven't seen any document. Arianit was, so I'm afraid that I may not have a full picture of the proposal, but from the perspective of education, as the government is relying on licensed software, I think that we in the field of education have to follow the same path. The reason is that education system is not in the best position to introduce this departure from licensed over software due to the lack of technical capacities within the education software, within the education system. Mr. Yakciu mentioned that we have recently developed a strategy for education, which has in it one of the 5 objectives completely focused on digitization of education. And within that strategic objective, there are activities linked to promote use of open source software, but still we intend to provide to schools computers with licensed software. And so our distance learning platform is based on Microsoft technology and is built in partnership with Microsoft. So this is reality because the platform, the development of the platform started in April 2020, as I told you, in my partnership with and with technical assistance from UNICEF. Now we have advanced quite a lot in developing that platform and cannot simply abandon the process. Well, I believe that if there are champions within the education system who should lead us to that departure from open source, there will be higher education institutions or universities which have really more technical to lead us through that process. And I saw yesterday at Kosovo Research and Education Network, which already installed Moodle in their servers and made it available to the public university, to the universities, both public and private, use those resources. Whereas for the education system, we, to be very frank, nations to go ahead with using licensed software, and of course with this promotional activity included in the strategy, I believe that in next years we will be able also to explore a bit more this area, which is not very well known to us in general. So these would be my comments, and I would be in further discussion about this topic. Thank you, and sorry for problems in the connection.
Thank you, Mr. Dobroshi. Thank you for putting out the exact scenario out there. You are looking for phasing out the, if you really want to phase out the softwares that you have already deployed or already being used. I'm sure organizations like FOSS can help with that. Arianit would probably tell more about it later. Arianit, you had a comment.
Oh, I have the mic. Sorry,
Yep.
I don't need it. Sorry, I want to make some comments. I don't know if I took anybody's turn here in the room, but I will be brief. So, what government can do, and where I am a believer, is that so it can set goals which can be risky as opposed to business which have a short time horizon. The government can say, well, we want to develop our workforce, and we're going to do that through expanding the know-how that is built locally. And one way to do that is expand the software that is sourced locally. And the best way to do that is through free software, because you can just take that and ask local companies to support it and build on it. So currently in the education system, there is very little software being used, definitely very little being used legally. So I would say we have a clean slate, and it's easy to start fresh with free software. The other advantage is that we start small and we fail small. So all the current projects that have been failing in Kosovo in ICT have been large, big projects which fail after 2 or 3 million have been spent. So we have the health information system is one of those, and we don't need to fail that big. With free software, you get the software for free, and you see where it goes. You build it as you go on. Instead of buying licenses, you buy everything else that has been currently missing in Kosovo. So in the best case so far, we've bought licenses, and of course you need much more than that. You need technical support. You need support to users and all the services that go along. So free software, instead of buying the licenses, suggests you to invest locally in all those other services. The other thing is that free software, it was mentioned somehow, it brings so many things by default that the government wants. So open standards is one, longevity of support is another. Open data was mentioned. Of course, it should be open data by default. So many things are built into the software. With procurement law, I would like to see that this time horizon, total cost of ownership was mentioned, and I think it's a great concept. Currently, the procurement law allows you to buy stuff and services up to 3 years. If we extend this further, like 7 or 10 years at least, as a notion of it, as an exercise, we see the clear advantages of free software versus something else that might lock you in after 3 years. So we would like to see more investment in people, and this is what all the institutions should be doing instead of software. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Moving to Daniel.
I think one of the things which I would like to reply to the Vice Minister is there is a lot of areas of application where we can apply free software. So it's not the first thing to have a functional stack that you built up with Microsoft Teams with the help of Microsoft for your schools to be replaced by something else. That is the last step. The first step is to have a coherent strategy, like Arianit said, make sure that the requests you are sending out to suppliers and so on are neutral towards the technology used, and where possible favor open source, free software, free data, as you already indicated as focus points for your government. And then look for the fields of application where it's currently bad and improve it with free software there. And that'll take years and years and years. And once that is all successful, then the Microsoft Teams environment will have nicely aged, and you are in the situation that you either put out a few $1 million for a replacement, or you basically use the opportunity to go somewhere else. And at that point in time, it's, I think, sensible to touch that, but I would not have a application set that is new and running and well introduced, focused first. That doesn't make sense. There's just way too much other stuff which can be handled and is to the direct benefit of the people using it. Because everywhere you have the situation that technology in government and administration is undersourced, aged, and those areas are the first way you should apply a strategy. But the strategy needs to be there first, so it is applied consistently. Because if you apply things over 10 years, you want to have one consistent strategy, and then it all works together.
Thank you, Daniel. We have only 1 minute remaining. Is there any final questions or comments from anyone else in the room? Andy Simpkins? Yeah.
Backing up what Daniel was saying is, if you only use a set of skills that you currently have, you are only ever going to have those skills forever and forever. As you're saying, pick a pain point, somewhere where something is not working. Move to that, look at that and fix that in a different way. You teach a new set of skills, you acquire a new set of skills. You have a large community around you that will help you to achieve that goal. And now you have some experts in that field. The next pain point, you do the same thing again. And it's not an overnight switch. Bit by bit, you can achieve your longer-term strategic goals by taking small problems one at a time. I believe the phrase is, how do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time.
Thank you, Andy, for that nice comment about larger solutions or solving larger problems with smaller solutions. Any final comments from anyone? Yeah. Please keep it very short.
Kerala had a flood situation some years back. So at that time, we developed something for people to mark their location to people to come and save them. So at first, they were using some Google Maps or something like that. Yeah. But at the time, they have some licensing issues, so you can't use it for so many periods. So they switched to OpenStreetMap and got it very successfully. So that used OpenStreetMap that the license don't deny them from marking their location, so people can come and rescue them. So what the government or the people started is like they tried to map all the part of Kerala into the OpenStreetMap. So Kosovo government can also do something like that. Also, my father worked in the electricity department. So what they are doing is they are mapping all the electric lines in the OpenStreetMap, so they can have a good idea about that. So government can do something like that also.
Yes, there are many such use cases in which free software-based services have been very useful and kind of went away from the restrictions used by proprietary software in terms of mapping, in terms of digitalization across various sectors. So we are out of time. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you very much, Mr. Dukalchini, for joining us remotely, and Mr. Lilzon. I won't say the last name, Mr. Lilzon. Thank you very much for joining here in person. Thank you very much for everyone for joining. Have a good day. Yeah.